I'm not anti-government. I don't believe in terrorism. And I want to make it especially clear that there are a lot of good people in the FBI and the CIA, naval intelligence, army intelligence, military intelligence, NSA. Unfortunately, there are a few key people in key positions who have made a difference, a big difference, in what's happening in America today. I retired from the FBI March 1979. At that time, I was in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division. I had more than 700 personnel under my command. The Attorney General of the United States, Griffin Bell, asked me after I retired if I'd coordinate security for the Pan American Games. I did. I was a consultant in the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. I was a consultant for former Governor Jerry Brown, California Narcotic Authority. So I do have credentials. My first and credibility, believe me. Now, if you read the internet, you may not think so, because there are some heavy-duty FBI informants out there like Stu Webb and Barbara Hartwell, who are MK-Ultra mind control victims, CIA mind control victims, who are making all kinds of disparaging remarks about me. But I don't want to deal with those people, because if you read their material, you'll see that it's designed to discredit people like me, former State Senator John DeCamp, and other leaders who are trying our best to expose what's happening in America today, and actually around the world. I personally investigated the Oklahoma City bombing case. Huge cover-up. Jack Kennedy's assassination, huge cover-up. Bobby Kennedy's assassination, huge cover-up. World Trade Center, huge cover-up. Okay, terrorism. They're using it as an excuse to take away our constitutional rights and our civil liberties.
Cosmic flame.
The Bilderbergs. The Illuminati, Bilderberg, New World Order, globalists are the element behind this. It dovetails into the satanic movement, and this movement has infiltrated into our intelligence community, the once great FBI and the CIA. FBI agent for 27 and a half years. At the time of my retirement, I was the senior special agent in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division. I have been qualified in the courts as an expert on cults and satanic ritual abuse. I have information from various sources that judges, law enforcement, prosecutors, attorneys, doctors, and many prominent individuals, including actors, actresses, professional football and baseball players, are involved in these type activities. If you go back 225 or 30 years ago, you have what we call the Illuminati that was established in 1776. And the goals of the Illuminati, this is all very well documented, are to take over the world. One of the best ways of taking over the world is to control people's minds and to take over a country through the control of the minds. So what's happening in America, and based on my research and my interviews with numerous individuals, is that the powers that be, the higher-ups, the people in the Illuminati, are using the satanic cults as a means and as a tool to condition individuals and to make them victims of the mind control, MK-Ultra mind control program. There's probably close to 4 million practicing Satanists in the United States alone, based on my intelligence information.
Called Baal, which the Oxford English Dictionary confirms as being a Hebrew word. Baal is the chief male deity of the Phoenician and Canaanite nations.
Was the Jack Kennedy assassination. So I checked into that, and by the way, I used to be in charge of the FBI in Dallas, and also I was in charge in Los Angeles after Dallas. So in checking into the Jack Kennedy assassination, I learned, no question about it, that it was a joint hit by the CIA and the Chicago mob. Sam Giancana, head of the La Cosa Nostra in Chicago, 3 days before he was to testify before Congress, was shot and killed, murdered. This encouraged me to do some more checking into some of these national terrorist acts that have taken place and other cover-ups in the United States. I interviewed the naval intelligence officer who on December 4th, 1941, received information that the Japanese were going to bomb Pearl Harbor. We had broken the secret code of the Japanese. He told me personally, on December the 4th, he gave it to his superiors. They passed it up the line. After Pearl Harbor, he was subpoenaed to testify before Congress. His boss called him in and said, "Don't worry about it, don't respond to the subpoena. Someday you'll know why." He never did testify before Congress. And he recently passed on, by the way. So we have not only a cover-up in these other areas, but looking at the national picture, Pearl Harbor. And look at Waco. The military was involved in destroying and shooting and killing, and also the FBI, women and children in Waco. They used tanks, military tanks, in violation of posse comitatus, which is a law that says the military cannot be used to enforce a civilian population. They got away with it. There's an interesting story. I did some research on Waco. As I've told you, I've done a lot of research. And in many instances, I've not only been there, I've done that, and I've been on the scene. I've spent most of my retirement money investigating these matters, including Oklahoma City, and I'll go into that in just a minute, 911 and so forth. But in Waco, there were 4 BATF agents who were shot and killed. Some of the Branch Davidians were tried, sentenced for these, quote, murders, and are serving prison terms today, probably for life. In researching the 4 BATF agents who were shot, I learned every one of them was shot in the head. Now, for those of you who have been in the military, that's a sniper shot, no question about it. One of them, the bullet, the trajectory of the bullet was from above, down through his lip, and into his body, probably from a helicopter. It's interesting to note that these 4 men, BATF agents, at one time were all bodyguards for former President Bill Clinton. That was Waco. Ruby Ridge. Randy Weaver was set up by a BATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, informant. He bought a shotgun that was about a 1/4 of an inch too short by law. They arrested him and served him with a warrant. He refused to appear before the courts, and they sent an army after him. Horiuchi, the FBI sharpshooter, shot and killed his wife while she was standing in the doorway. He used to brag about it, what a great shot he was. I retired, as you all know, in '79, came out, worked the McDonald case. The light bulb went on when I realized evidence lost, stolen, destroyed, altered, etc., etc. Obtained a confession from Alina Stokely, the girl in the floppy hat, who said that he didn't commit the crimes, Dr. McDonald did not commit the crimes, they were committed by my satanic cult group. I went public with the information. I obtained the confession on October 25, 1980. A number of TV shows, radio talk shows, people came out of the woodwork from all parts of the country telling me about the satanic cult movement in this country, United States. People on the East Coast, West Coast, South, and so on and so forth. Same basic story. And they not only told me about the cults, but they told me about the inner workings of the cults. Not a lot of detail, but enough that I could piece it together. And I'm saying, how could somebody from Maine know and furnish the same information as somebody from Southern California. As a result of that, of course, then I obtained a copy later on of Pawns in the Game, and this book, Pawns in the Game, which I sold out of on this conference, really explained what has happened in the last 240 or 50 years. And that is this, that in 1773, Adam Weishaupt, a Bavarian, former priest, was commissioned to obtain or come up with with goals to take over the world. And on May the 1st, 1776, he announced the 25 goals. The goals are unbelievable if you look at them one by one and then analyze what's happened today. Corrupt the youth through sex and drugs, control the press, create an incident, and then come in and act as the saviors, like the Reichstag, and we saw this in Oklahoma City. So then, not only did I, of course, research the Illuminati and come up with the answer there, but these people kept calling me from around the country. They've been calling me now for 22 years. And based on the information that's been furnished to me, this evil element has infiltrated virtually every level of society. Okay, it's in the government. They've gone out of their way, of course, to infiltrate in city, county, state, and the federal government. It's in the banking system. It's in the courts. It's in the prosecutors, the attorneys, doctors. It's mind-boggling. It's unbelievable. I have been asked how many. By the way, this dovetails, the satanic cult movement dovetails into, as part of the Illuminati, dovetails into drugs, prostitution, homosexuality, the whole 9 yards. And I've been asked on a number of occasions, how many are there in the United States, just say walking the streets? And I say that there's close to 4 million, if not 4 million, practicing Satanists in America today. That's 1.5% of the population. I reached these figures through 3 different means. Number one, a confidential source in the South Bay area, Los Angeles, population 200,000, says there's about 3,000 members in that area. That's where the Manhattan Beach McMartin case took place. Lincoln, Nebraska, 200,000 population. Another source told me about 3,000 members there. Iowa City, Iowa, another source told me about 1,500, and Iowa City's a population of 100,000. So if you project those figures, that's what I see as the strength and the number of individuals who are involved in this movement at basically at the street level, and also in controlling positions in various industries. So it is a serious problem. What we're going to do about it, I don't know. The best we can do is just expose it and try to wake up America. It dovetails into the banking system, as Eustace will tell you, I'm sure. And it's even in the military. As Bo mentioned to me, I think just yesterday, the military declared Satanism a legitimate religion, and they can practice. So what year was that, Bo?
It was 1976. It was the year I changed on my dog tag my religion to Special Forces. And the Inspector General was very chagrined because he came and said, Bo, you're the commander of Special Forces. We cannot gig you. We don't want to. You've got to change your dog tag. And I said, look, if you can put Satanism as your religion, as an official Army recognized religion, don't tell me I can't have Special Forces as my religion. And so the troops heard about it, and they all changed their religion to Special Forces too.
I'll try to cut the rest of the answer as short as possible. Do I think that the FBI and the CIA, I'm not talking about the whole group. There's a lot of good people in both agencies. But do I think that they're incompetent? No. Do I think they've been infiltrated? Yes. And in the FBI in particular, I'll tell you what happened here when Reagan was president. They were having difficulty getting agents on the street to advance to the supervisory level. Of course, that's a very important position. And because the fun is on the street, it's not sitting behind a desk all day pushing paper. So they sent a memo out. This is what I've been told by some of my friends. to the street agents, anybody that wants to be promoted, you know, submit your resume and let's go from there. Well, as a result, I think that what they did is the good agents stayed on the streets, and the other agents, the Illuminati members, if you want to call them that, not all of them, of course, advanced to the supervisory level. On one occasion here during the Atlanta, Georgia Olympics, there was a spokesperson on for the FBI on national television in connection with the bombing that took place down there, and I had a call from an adult survivor. Adult survivor is somebody that's born into the movement, the cults, is raised there, gets out, tries to go straight and stay away from it. But I had a call from an adult survivor and said, this person told me, a lady, woman, that she recognized that FBI spokesman as having attended satanic meetings in the past. So I'm saying that, hey, they've had 230 some years to put this together. They're advancing. I know of one adult survivor who was a recruiter and a trainer. She was training other people in San Diego area to recruit survivors. And she was recruiting 26 people at a time, other people, teaching them how to recruit in the satanic movement. Very serious problem. So I'm sorry I couldn't make it any shorter than that. Ask you this question. This hierarchy, this hidden hierarchy that we have, I've tried to research and locate a headquarters for this element. It'd be nice if we knew where that was, and also how often they meet and where they meet. Do you have any information on that?
Well, for quite a few years, I believe that the headquarters was the office of N.M. Rothschild in London. And I still think that they do have a special office somewhere, but it's these people. Now, there is also, behind the scenes, a demonic force, whether it's extraterrestrial, but it's definitely a demonic, anti-human operation. And that's why I say I've never been able to get, I've never seen any artist rendering or imagining of this force, because apparently it's something so horrible we can't even conceive of it.
It's interesting, too, that in the Bible, the Apostle Paul uses an interesting term when he says that we have a fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and the forces of darkness. He uses the term in Greek, cosmokratoros, or rulers of this world darkness.
Are we losing sight of the fact that Oklahoma City, the World Trade Center 93, and that 911 is actually a ploy in order to take away many of our constitutional rights and civil liberties? That's what it's all about, as far as I'm concerned. And then if you're going to conquer the world, you got to conquer the United States first, because we're the strongest in the world. And in order to conquer us, you can do several things. Number one, you control the food, as Henry Kissinger has said in the past. Take away your constitutional rights, civil liberties. Put the so-called enemy behind bars and control them. Set up the 10 districts that's been set up in this country, so we won't be able to travel from one district to another. And the internment camps. I was talking to the former civilian head of the prison system in the state of Texas in 1997, and he told me that there are 8 prisons in Texas, brand new prisons that have been built, that are manned, but there's no inmates in there. So that's, in my opinion, sure, money's part of it, but the bottom line is another step toward taking over the United States and taking over the world, the Illuminati plan, the golden plan. Bo is a great guy. Everybody up here is great. I'm so proud to be up here with them. I'm really flattered, because I know we have some real Americans here. Brian, thank you for inviting me and
thank you,
making
Ted.
me part of this fantastic event. I've given a number of lectures across the country, and I have to say this is rates number 1 as far as your people are concerned, and as far as
Thank you
the
very
reception
much.
is concerned. Just let me say this, that I don't think there's any question about it. I think that people are waking up, and it started with the Jack Kennedy assassination, followed by Bobby's assassination, There were more bullets in the walls of Bobby's assassination than there were in Bobby. And it goes on. Then we had Ruby Ridge, and we had Waco, and more recently we had 93 bombings, and then Oklahoma City, and then we have most recently 9/11, and then we have people like Arlen Specter, the magic bullet theorist, coming out, making statements that he expects us to believe. I mean, outright fabrications. It's impossible on the Jack Kennedy assassination for those bullets to have gone 90-degree angles 3 times. But the people are waking up, and I notice it as I travel around the country, and this is great. This is wonderful, because that's what we have to do. We have to wake people up. I can say this, that since I got out of the Bureau, FBI, 1979, 23 years ago, and became involved in these issues, that I've done everything I can to wake up my fellow brothers and sisters, and along the way I've lost an awful lot of people that I thought were friends. I mean, they don't even return phone calls anymore, but I don't care, because it's important that we follow the path of truth, that we don't weave to the left or to the right. If you know you're right, and my mother and father taught me this, if it's the truth, you don't have to apologize to anybody. And that's what we have to do. That's what each and every one of us has to do. I have a tremendous amount of research, as you know, if you visited my table. And anybody that bought any of my research, there's no copyright with me. I want you to take it and make copies and get it to your friends. Educate as many people as possible. One of the most common questions I'm asked is, what can I do? I'm a housewife. I'm a businessman. Usually it's housewives. Well, what you can do is get the research, get mine and everybody else's up here and whatever else you can find, and pass it on to your friends. Get the videotapes. People are lazy today because they don't like to read. They'd rather watch the videotapes. But if that's what it takes, get the videotapes and make copies and get them out to your friends. And then I think that most important thing, other than trying to educate each other and research and tell your neighbor, most important thing is that we have a mission to save our own souls and save the souls of all of us around us. So that's got to be one of the highlights of this whole campaign, to expose this evil element that's casting its shadow across our great nation. And so as we go forward from here, folks, don't apologize to anybody. Just do your thing and talk to your brother and sister and say, hey, come on, let's go. We've got to save your soul too. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted.
However, my first major investigation when I returned from Puerto Rico was a Dr. Jeffrey R. McDonald case. He's a former Green Beret doctor who was convicted of murdering his wife and 2 children at Fort Bragg, February 17, 1970. He'd been tried and convicted and sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. I was asked by the defense team to investigate the case because they claimed that Dr. McDonald was innocent. I said I would, but if I learned that he murdered his wife and 2 children, I would discontinue my investigation, no longer become involved. I want you to know I'm still working for Dr. McDonald. He is an innocent man. Now, once I became involved in the case, I had to read everything, and I learned that evidence was lost, evidence was stolen, evidence was altered. An FBI agent, Paul Stombaugh, lied before the grand jury. And most important of all, Colette, the wife, had skin where she had fought off the assailants under her fingernails. That skin was handed over to William F. Ivory, the chief investigator for the Army, and it has disappeared. 10 months into the case, October 25, 1980, through a series of circumstances, I don't have time to go into the details now, obtained a signed confession from one Helena Stokely. I had 3 sessions with her, 10 days each, total of 30 days. Helena told me that Dr. McDonald did not commit those crimes, that they were committed by her satanic cult group. And I said to myself, what's this all about? I don't know anything about Satanism. I read about it in the Bible, of course, and that's about it. But as I delved into the case, I learned that drugs from Southeast Asia were being flown into the United States to various military bases in plastic bags in the bodies of the dead GIs. I further learned from Helena that her satanic cult group was involved in distributing these drugs up and down the East Coast. They were mad at Dr. McDonald because he was abusive to the cult members and the GIs who went to the civilian hospital where he was moonlighting for relief of some sort. So they went in and attacked him that night. There were a total of 7 involved in the crime. She named them all for me. Right now, today, I know where some of them are located. But to further check and document this, I went to the UCLA library, and I found out, in fact, in the Time magazine, January 1, 1973, there was an article about bringing drugs in plastic bags in the body cavities of dead GIs. There was no question in my mind Helena was telling the truth. I gave her a polygraph test and she passed. I had her examined by a psychiatrist and she passed. And as a matter of fact, the government themselves had given her a polygraph examination early in their investigation before I entered the case. And Byzantine, the Army polygraph operator, said that she thought that she was telling the truth. She thought she was there that night. Now, the most recent series of events in the McDonald case. Now, I'm telling you a little bit about the McDonald case because that's what woke me up as to what was going on. It was after that I started researching and went back and found out about the Illuminati. Illuminati/Satanism. It was after that I learned considerable more about what was going on. And the most recent information, Dr. McDonald, who's been in the penitentiary for some 25 or 26 years now, appeared before a parole board just 2 days ago, his first that he's ever appeared before a parole board. And the reason he had never appeared before is because, in his opinion, had he appeared before, it would be an admission of guilt. In this particular instance, he still claimed he was innocent, but he did appear before the board because he's a newly-wed individual with a woman named Kathy. And of course, if you read the papers in the last 2 days, his parole was turned down, and the parole board made him eligible for another hearing in 15 years. This poor man not only lost his wife and 2 children, he has served 25 years in the penitentiary and another 15 years to go. He's 61 years old. I am still working the case. What are the latest developments on the case? In 1997, the judge, federal judge, agreed to do a DNA test. And they chose 15 individual pieces of evidence to be examined. However, the judge said that when you open the evidence envelopes, only the prosecutor can be present. Well, they opened the evidence envelopes. The prosecutor did. How many do you think were empty? 5. 5 evidence envelopes were empty. The skin under Colette's fingernails would have established Dr. McDonald's innocence alone. Now we have DNA authorized in 1997. Here we are in 2005. They still have not completed the DNA test. From the McDonald case, the next case I worked of a major consequence was the McMartin preschool case in Manhattan Beach, California. The children there claimed there were tunnels under the school. They were taken into the tunnels and through the tunnels up into the trap door of a bathroom in a triplex next door, placed in automobiles, and prostituted in the community. These are 2-, 3-, and 4-year-old children before they enter kindergarten. In addition, the children claimed that they were flown into the mountains where they were involved with adults in robes, black robes, chanting, candles. They talked about the brown babies who were cut up, actually sacrificed. And in checking into this and researching this, of course, this was obviously a satanic ceremony. The McMartin family, who owned the preschool, they were tried, of Dre Bucky and his grandmother. I had an opportunity in 1990 to gain control of the school. Now, the school had been given to Danny Davis, the defense attorney, and he had sold it, even though he made $15 million on the case, by the way. He had sold it to a contractor who was going to tear it down. When I learned this, I contacted the contractor. I said, I want to be given an opportunity to go on that school and look for the tunnels. The authorities had looked for them in 1987. They said they could find no tunnels. Along with some of the parents, we hired Dr. Gary Stickle, UCLA archaeologist. He hired his crew and brought them in, and in 34 days, Dr. Stickle said there had been tunnels under that school. They were covered up, and they were covered in. An informant of mine told me that there was an abandoned satanic site in Crestline, California, up in the mountains. I went up into the mountains and obtained photographs, of the site. I have a lecture that I give where these pictures are available. It's called Gunderson Chronicles No. 2. It's a 4-hour lecture that I gave in Kansas City a number of years ago, which shows this abandoned site and also pictures from the McMartin Tunnel school dig. From there, I became involved in another case, very frightening case, because I established, with the help of people like John DeCamp, former state senator in Nebraska, that we have in this country today a covert military criminal enterprise, government enterprise, primarily by U.S. military intelligence, that is operating full throttle, and everybody refuses to investigate it. In the Nebraska case, it's called the Franklin Cover-Up. This is the book here that John DeCamp wrote, by the way. It's all documented in there. And in that particular instance, they were taking children out of foster homes, orphanages, Boys Town, driving them from Omaha, Nebraska to Sioux City, Iowa, 184 miles away, placing them in private jets and flying them to Washington, D.C. for sex orgies with prominent people, including congressmen, senators, and certain people in the White House. It's well documented. I have personally talked to Paul Benassi. I had a 5-hour interview with him. It's a tape that's available. I don't have it with me here, but you can order it. I have a 5-hour interview with Paul that he gave me in 1993. Paul told me how he was used. He was part of the kidnapping crew and was used as a decoy when he was 10, 11, 12 years old in parks, shopping malls, to attract the children over near where the adults were in a car waiting for them. They'd throw them in the back seat, chloroform them, and make off with them. Paul also told me that these children, many of them become sex slaves. Many of them are used as toys. The boys, they call the boys toys. I don't know what they call the girls. But these degenerate, sick people, the men are more interested in the little boys than they are the girls for some reason. But it's all well documented. Paul drew the inside living quarters of the White House. Now, this information broke in about 1987. That's about right after I entered, just before I entered the case. I replaced a fellow named Gary Caradori, who was the investigator for a Nebraska Senate committee. Gary met the official photographer of the group, who had split from the group, defected, and agreed to take the pictures that this official photographer gave him, and they met in Chicago, agreed to take the pictures back to the committee. He flew out of Chicago in his private plane, a short distance out of Chicago. The plane exploded in midair, and his briefcase has never been found. He and his 11-year-old boy died. His briefcase has never been found. The rear seat of the airplane has never been found. I made every attempt possible to obtain possession of or control of that plane, because I wanted to examine it for bomb chemicals, particularly the back seat. It's no longer available. Nobody knows what happened to it. Gary Caradori was a civilian, yet it was taken to a military base for examination. A deputy sheriff was the first one on the scene. He saw the pictures. He started picking up the pictures. An FBI agent came along, took the pictures away from him, told him to keep his mouth shut. He started talking to a few people. A year later, his wife was murdered. He's no longer talking. This international child kidnapping ring, I later learned, was out of Washington, D.C. It was very active, and the organization is known as the Finders. And I have a report on the Finders back there. Everything I'm telling you is documented, by the way. The Finders has been established and operating throughout the 1960s up to the present time. It was exposed in 1987. They moved their operation to Wichita, Kansas, and they're operating right today in Wichita, Kansas. I have taken my report to the FBI a half a dozen times, demanded an investigation, and I have yet to be interviewed. So we have the Finders, we have the Franklin cover-up, which documents what I'm telling you. We have the pawns in the game. Pawns in the game is the Illuminati. This is the Illuminati/satanic movement in this country today. And the last thing I'm going to mention in the way of a book is why Johnny can't come home. Johnny Gosch was, September the 5th, 1982, a newspaper boy on a Sunday, and he was about to deliver his newspapers in West Des Moines, Iowa. He never delivered any newspapers. He disappeared. The mother, Noreen Gosch, was dumbfounded, didn't know what happened, demanded an investigation of the FBI and by the West Des Moines Police Department. The chief of police in West Des Moines said to her, even though he's disappeared, we do not have any witnesses who saw him being grabbed and placed in a car or being taken control of. So we're not going to investigate it. The FBI used the same premise. They refused to investigate it. Now, I've been involved in kidnappings in the FBI, and I can tell you that it's automatic within 24 hours, at the end of 24 hours, that we had to go in my day, this was back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, we had to go in and start investigating the case after they've disappeared for 24 hours. Today, as I stand here and you sit there, the children are disappearing in this country at the rate of 83 per hour. That's over 700,000 children a year. Now I can go back to July 1982. The Reader's Digest claimed there were 100,000 children disappearing every year. There's another statistic that I find very interesting, and that is that it is estimated 2,500 children are kidnapped and murdered in this country every year. That's an unbelievable figure. Yet, the FBI refuses to investigate it. Now, after the Nebraska case, and part of the Nebraska case, most recently, we have a young man named Jeff Gannon, who has appeared in the White House using a fraudulent press pass. This has happened within the last month. Certain people in the White House were questioning him and were suspicious of him because when he would engage in a press conference with the president, President Bush, he was asking what they call soft questions. Soft questions meaning the president would have an answer for them, he'd look good. Somebody started checking into his background. They learned that he was actually an individual named Jim Guckert. This is all on the internet, by the way. And Guckert had a homosexual website. So Jeff Gannon is an alias of Jim Guckert. Now his picture appeared in the internet, and he is believed to be Johnny Gosch, who was kidnapped September the 5, 1982. The mother, Noreen Gosch, who wrote this book, Why Johnny Can't Come Home, I have a 2-hour interview with her on video, available again if you want to check my order blank. She did not sit still for this. Can you imagine if the 83 mothers of children who disappear every hour would do what Noreen Gosch has done? We wouldn't have this problem today. She went to the FBI, demanded an investigation. They refused to investigate. The police refused to investigate because the case tied into the Franklin cover-up. Some of our top politicians in the country, leading businessmen, Harold Anderson was identified by the children. The head of the Nebraska Forestry Service was identified by these children. There 80 children came forward in this Nebraska case. And it goes, as I said, right up to the White House. In 1987, according to Paul Benassi, he was furnishing toys, or little boys, young boys, to the sick people, certain sick individuals, in the White House itself. I have the names of some of these people. No need to mention it here. Some of them are mentioned in the Franklin cover-up. But it does appear that Jeff Gannon is, in fact, Johnny Gosch. Noreen Gosch, the mother, has looked at the pictures. She believes it's Johnny Gosch because he has a scar on his right cheek about the size of a nickel. It's white. Gannon has a scar there also. Little Johnny Gosch had a birthmark on his left chest about 8 inches long. From looking at pictures of Jeff Gannon on the internet, it appears that he had a birthmark at one time, and there's been an attempt to erase it. I personally talked to one of the youngsters who was involved in this network. I've talked to several of them. And he assures me that Jeff Gannon is, in fact, Johnny Gosch. Well, how did Johnny Gosch get from West Des Moines, Iowa, 12 years old, all the way with the phony press pass into the White House as of a few weeks ago? Well, what happened to Johnny is that he was transported from West Des Moines, Iowa to Sioux City. He was placed on a farm for 3 weeks, sexually molested. He was taken to the mountains in Colorado, placed in a cage in a house of some sort, or a cabin. And then later, he was used as a sex slave. A sex slave. They didn't kill him, they didn't sacrifice him, although a number of these kids are sacrificed in satanic ceremonies. Now, he escaped with another young man. They stole a car. And in 1997, Johnny knocked on his mother's door at 2:30 in the morning, Noreen Gosh, and said he wanted to talk to her. He was there with another young boy. He came in, he told Noreen, he says, "Mother, I was kidnapped. I've been placed in a covert military CIA-controlled, mind-controlled project and used as a sex slave." He said, "I can't come forward at this time because they will kill me." And then he left. Noreen says that's the last time she talked to him, 1997. Now, several years after that, a girl named Burns, who was a producer for 2020, decided to do a story on the Johnny Gosch kidnapping and the Nebraska case. And she interviewed me. In fact, I spent 5 days with her, gave her the benefit of all my research, which is available to you folks also. And then she got a lead that Johnny was hiding out on an Indian reservation in northern Minnesota. She went there and flushed him out, and he basically went into hiding, and now he shows up at the White House. He was a mind control victim. If you don't know anything about MK Ultra mind control program, it came into this country through the German scientists after World War II. They were involved with the Nazis during the war and prior to World War II in developing robots and individuals to be used on command for anything that they wished, including assassinations and other nefarious activity. The MK Ultra program, CIA mind control program, was investigated by Congress in 1987. Congress said, CIA, you got to quit doing that. You're bad boys. And they said, we will quit. Don't kid yourself. It's very active today. There are people like Barbara Hartwell out there who are mind control victims. She's another one who's been bashing me. I must be doing a pretty good job because I wouldn't have these people criticizing me on the internet like they do. And of course, it doesn't bother me in the least. But going back to the Nebraska case, MK Ultra, a lot of this training took place at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska, which was Strategic Air Command headquarters. You recall after 9/11, the president flew to, I think it was to the south, someplace in Louisiana or New Orleans, and then he flew to Offutt Air Force Base in the afternoon of September the 11th, 2001, and they had a party there that morning at 9:30 in the morning. He missed the party. He was sorry he missed the party. Warren Buffett was there, by the way. And the MK Ultra program has been very actively administered, not only at Offutt Air Force Base, at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the place where Dr. McDonald's family was slaughtered in 1970. Now, the Nebraska case, I don't want to leave that without telling you that in the early 1990s, Yorkshire TV came to the United States with a camera crew for 7 months to do a documentary on it. They went back to England, produced the documentary, and they brought it over into the United States. It was listed in the TV guide to be aired on May the 3rd, 1994. When certain members of Congress found out about it, they threatened the cable industry with restrictive legislation. Somebody anonymously bought up the rights to the videotape or the documentary and ordered all copies destroyed. I just happen to have a bootleg copy of that documentary, and it is available. I have been selling these and these books and getting this report out of mine to anybody that's interested in it. So About 6 months ago, as any good investigator would do, I said, I'm going to get a copy of that TV guide. I didn't have a copy. John DeCamp had one at one time, couldn't find it. And I received a copy of the TV guide for May 3rd, 1994. 10 p.m. Discovery Channel. It's not listed. A nature show is listed instead on the new reprinted edition. I'm not going to be outfoxed by these people. I went to the Los Angeles Times TV log. It's listed, Conspiracy of Silence. I called a friend of mine in Philadelphia, and I said, check the TV log for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Conspiracy of Silence is listed in the Philadelphia Inquirer. The power of the press. They changed and reprinted the whole TV guide. It never has been shown publicly in the United States, and I doubt if it ever will be shown publicly. But as I said, it is available to you. Let's go back to 1776, May the 1st. Adam Weishaupt was commissioned by the Rothschild family to set up the goals to control and take over the world with a one world government. Adam Weishaupt came up with 25 goals. Among these goals were control the press, corrupt the youth through sex and drugs, elect our own people meaning the Illuminati, to key positions in all levels of the government, city, county, state, and federal. And it goes on. The final goal was to take over the world, the one world government. Information is very well documented by William Guy Carr in his magazine, his book, excuse me, Pawns in the Game.
The death dumps, otherwise known as chemical trails, are being dropped and sprayed throughout the United States, in England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Europe, and I have personally seen them not only in the United States but in Mexico and Canada. Birds are dying around the world. Fish are dying by the hundreds of thousands around the world. This is genocide. This is poison. This is murder by the United Nations. This element within our society that's doing this must be stopped. I happen to know of 2 of the locations where the airplanes are that dump this crap on us. 4 of the planes are out of the Air National Guard, Lincoln, Nebraska, and the other planes are out of Fort Still, Oklahoma. I personally have observed the planes that were standing still in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, at the Air National Guard. They have no markings on them. They're huge, bomber-like airplanes with no markings. This is a crime. Crime against humanity, crime against America, crime against the citizens of this great country. They must be stopped. What is wrong with Congress? This has an effect on their population and their people and their friends and their relatives and themselves. What's wrong with them? What's wrong with the pilots who are flying these airplanes? They're dumping this crap, this poison, on their own families. Somebody has to do something about it. Somebody in Congress has to step forward and stop it now. Thank you. I'm Ted Gunderson. The FBI today is not the agency it was 40 years ago. And I'm convinced that the FBI today has been infiltrated by the Illuminati, as has the CIA, as has military intelligence, as has NSA, and I think our government's being run by the Illuminati, to be honest with you.
Well, the CIA has been often called the enforcement arm of the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, at 58 East 68th Street in New York City. It's the Rockefeller Bund, the Cassius cartel that owns the Federal Reserve. They involved with the Bank of England. We're seeing the major operation coming from London and from New York City and Washington. Do you think that these craft are military? Is this done by, do you think Leon Panetta is flying out the military, or is this private contractors, possibly through Evergreen Air, that would be putting these dispersants upon us?
Well, I believe, since you have the Lincoln, Nebraska Air National Guard involved, I would say it's government. I don't think it's private contractors, but I don't know.
Well, we got a different opinion here, but there are those who are watching this show right now who know there are pilots that would like to come forth. They're just hunting for a website that will address this issue, because a lot of these chemtrail sites are not addressing the issue. They're not pointing their cameras and the telescope and their ire and anger on the target. But we find out that there are some people who are coming forth in private. They're telling us at this base up here in Oregon. There's a woman who was at a bar, and she was talking to some of the guys, and they were bragging about dropping this stuff all over the people of the planet. What is the mentality of somebody like that? Are they like the guards at Auschwitz and Dachau?
I would guess the mentality of these people who are doing this, there could be mind control victims, or I would say the military, and they do what they're told. Like you mentioned a few moments ago, this fellow that was in a firefight, he didn't know who he was shooting at or why he was shooting at him. But the thing that bothers me is, don't these pilots know that they're putting death dump on their own families? Okay, that would bother me if I was doing this and dumping this poison on my own family. And I don't understand it. I can't understand it. I can't explain it either.
What are you going to tell them? Look in there.
I'm telling the pilots to come forward, and we'll put you on camera without using your name and your face. .org at gmail.com.